On board, and glad to have as my guest Dr. Andy Bostom, who is an associate professor of medicine at Brown University Medical School. But more importantly in this case, he's the author, well, first of The Legacy of Jihad, but now most recently, Sharia versus Freedom, The Legacy of Islamic Totalitarianism. Professor, good to have you back on the program. Nope, he's not there. And I know why he's not there. How about that? My mistake. Sorry about that. Professor, welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. And we're going to have to put him back on hold and get the gremlins out of the system. But I think we can get him now. Yeah, I'll tell you what. We've got Professor Andy Bostom with me, but we had a little technical problem there, which I think should be solved now. Yeah, there we go. All right, put him back on hold, Brennan. Thank you. Professor Bostom, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on, Lars.
Glad to have you on. Now, tell me this. Did America cut a good deal with Iran, the deal announced this weekend by the President and the Secretary of State?
It's an absolutely disastrous deal. And, there's an interesting consensus that's emerged. If you look at what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, what Iran's President Rouhani has said, what the Russian Foreign Minister said, Lavrov, and what Iran's Foreign Minister Zarif said, they all concur on one thing, despite, obviously their vast disagreements over so many issues. They all concur that Iran's nuclear enrichment program will continue apace.
Well, but
that alone, Lars, tells you that this is a dangerous and delusive failure.
Here's the thing. The current state of affairs is that up to this point, the United States has said Iran has no right to be enriching uranium, and that's what the rest of the world has said. Now, seemingly in this deal, we've granted them not only relief from sanctions, but also, at least on paper, the right to keep enriching uranium, which was previously forbidden to them?
This is how bizarre it all is. If we really wanted to again, if the goal is truly Obama keeps repeating that the goal is not to allow them to have nuclear weapons, then we would begin with concrete strong steps, like having them dismantle this vast number of centrifuges that they have, whose only purpose is to enrich uranium. That would be an agreement with teeth in it. This is letting them allegedly go back to a lower level of enrichment without getting rid of a single centrifuge. Just basically at best, if we believe they would even do that, just kicks the can down the road a little bit, and then at the same time we're going to alleviate some of these economic pressures, which some have argued have been working, some are not so sure, but regardless, that was the only disincentive we currently had in place, and we're taking it away.
Dr. Bostom, let's get into a bit of the nuts and bolts so people understand what's going on here. They have 19,000 centrifuges right now. You can use those to take uranium ore and bring it up to a point of, say, 5 or 6% enrichment, which is good enough for power plant use. They would have to go to 90% for it to be usable in a uranium bomb. So they've agreed to only enrich it to 5%, but that means we're agreeing to let them have the precursor elements for making a bomb at some point down the line. And is there any civilian use that Iran is using uranium for at this point in their country?
No, I mean the kind of civilian use as a physician that I could see them, using isotopes for is, medical usages, diagnostics, therapeutics. That would be reasonable. Another reasonable thing to do would be to encourage them to improve their oil refinement capacity. I mean, this is a massive oil producer which has all kinds of technological problems making gasoline. That would be, if we trusted them at all, that would be some sort of alternative. The whole thing is preposterous, Lars.
So, and the relief from sanctions, I've heard people characterize it, especially the president's people, from the NSA, not from the NSA, but for his national security advisor, has been saying that, we're going to give them some relief by allowing them to buy some car parts, and we'll give them a little bit of the money that's currently frozen in foreign accounts. You give me your view of the kind of relief from sanctions and what it means to Iran right now.
Well, I think one of the things that's been argued is that it would help strengthen their currency. And that, of course, is fungible. So they could use that for whatever they care to use that for developing weapons programs, for funding terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. If the sanctions were actually working, one of the things they were doing is devaluing the real. and this would help bolster Iran financially and help stabilize its currency.
So what's the point of this deal from Obama's standpoint? Why are Obama and Kerry agreeing to say this is the deal we should do? The kind of deal that even his Democrat allies back at home don't like.
Yeah, I think they are of, let's face it, they are of this utopian mindset. Some can attribute darker motives to them, and some of those may not be so implausible. But it's to give them the benefit of the doubt. They honestly believe that this kind of appeasement mentality could actually work. What's really been ignored here, and it should come up every time we get to these kinds of discussions, is that this is an apocalyptic annihilationist regime that truly believes and advocates Islamic end-of-times theology.
This is the getting the Mahdi, the return of the 12th Imam, will be brought about by the kind of discord they could sow with a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, that's one part of it, but what's central to that and why Israel plays such a key role is that in both Shiite and Sunni end-of-times eschatology, end-of-times theology, the Jews have to be annihilated. I mean, this is just bread and butter. I mean, it's in Hamas's charter. I just recently wrote a monograph about a declaration that Haj Amin al-Husseini, the godfather of the Palestinian Arab movement, wrote, where he concluded in 1937 his fatwa to the global Muslim Ummah with this same apocalyptic hadith from the Sunni perspective. When Rouhani was elected, he invoked the Mahdi as having been the source of his electoral victory, and of course he went right into a rant about annihilating Israel. I mean, specifically, this is right before he was even sworn in. He said the Zionist regime has been a wound on the body of the Islamic world for years, and the wound should be removed. I mean, this is the kind of metaphor that the regime has been using for 30-plus years. Khomeini used to talk about the whole global Muslim Ummah bringing cups of water to the borders of Israel and washing it away. Ahmadinejad's statements are well known, Rafsanjani before him. I just think that every time we get into these discussions, this has to be restated over and over again so that it becomes clear to rational thinking people that you don't give this kind of apocalyptic mentality a weapons capability to fulfill its aims.
Dr. Andy Bostom is the author of Sharia versus Freedom. So you tell me, what's your theory for why the president would be willing to do this? He spent the better part of the last 4 years not doing much of anything in a concrete way to keep them from getting to where they are. And now, effectively, he said, go ahead and make the precursor chemicals, keep all your centrifuges, build more, just don't hook them up yet. What's his reason for putting America and the rest of the world in this position?
I really don't think that this kind of a mindset, whether it's his mindset or it's Kerry's mindset, and many others in the State Department and in policymaking circles, actually accept the lessons of the 20th century's totalitarian ideologues, whether they were the communist ideologues, whether they were the Nazi ideologues. There's a long history of appeasement. You know, we're coming up now on the 80th anniversary of the Ukrainian genocide. We recognized the Soviet Union when it was actively committing a genocide. It took a long time before that totalitarian threat abated, at least temporarily. Roosevelt also was quite pleased with the Munich Agreement. Of course, we know Chamberlain brokered it. There's a history of reacting in this kind of delusive way to totalitarian ideologues and not taking seriously what their ideology is, whether it's secular or whether it's religious.
So Obama becomes the 21st century Neville Chamberlain? Peace in our time?
I mean, this is really, again, Lars, that's the most benign explanation for it.
So what do we do at this point? What do the American people do when the president has gone off on a tangent like this, a tangent that even Chuck Schumer has said he's got to reverse as much as they possibly can?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, Lars. There seems to be, this is such a boldly delusive act that even the Democrats who support this president in so many other ways, certainly with his domestic agenda, are beginning to take a second look at this. What does this really mean? I thought there was, I mean, if it wasn't so bizarre, there was an almost comical debate that began today, apparently, between Kerry and his counterparts in Iran, in the foreign ministry, et cetera. Rouhani is coming out and saying, well, we can enrich uranium, and so are his cohorts in the regime there. And Kerry's beginning to argue with them.
Yeah,
I mean, there was something
amazing.
bizarre about that.
By the way, the president of Iran, Rouhani, has said we now have, as a country, nuclear rights. That's what this president has done. Dr. Bostom, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Lars.
Dr. Andy Bostom, the author of Sharia versus Freedom. You're listening to The Lars Larson Show.